Welcome, deep divers. Today, we're really digging into something pretty unique. It's this fascinating document about an internal part or subpersonality named Kenny.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for listeners who might be new to this idea, just think of subpersonality not as, a totally separate person, but more like a distinct, consistent way of thinking and feeling within yourself.
Like a specialist on your internal team.
Exactly. And Kenny is one of 10 such aspects within this larger system we're looking at.
That's right. And our main source here is this PDF, Kenny 2025 Reflection. It's really packed with insights, especially about personal growth and how these internal frameworks, well, they profoundly shape our lives.
So what's the mission today?
Our mission really is to pull out the key insights about Kenny, his identity, his philosophy, which is quite powerful, and maybe most importantly, how his way of operating internally might actually help clarify things for you in your external world. It's like an internal blueprint.
And it tells quite a story, doesn't it? This journey from 2024 to 2025.
It really does.
He's described as shifting from being just this internal systems guy
Right, purely
to
into it.
someone more outward-looking, a community-oriented philosopher broadening his influence. We want to see how we became this wise builder of bridges.
Between people, eras, ideas.
Yeah. Let's unpack it. So, okay, let's start right at the foundation. Kenny's core identity. The document calls him the architect of integrity.
Mm-hmm. Principled builder.
Protector of structure, advocate for clarity, justice, forward motion, even the system within the system.
And the inner compass. Heavy stuff.
It is. So what does that actually look like? How does he operate?
Well, the document breaks it down into like 5 key facets, which is really helpful.
Okay.
First, he's the builder of systems.
Okay.
His core strength is designing order out of, well, chaos, really.
Right.
He spots the inefficiencies others might miss and builds frameworks designed to last.
Not just quick fixes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not just about speed, it's deeply ethical. He's constantly asking, does this work sustainably? Is it fair? Does it reflect our core values?
Yeah.
It's about that solid, durable infrastructure.
Okay, so like making sure the actual plumbing works, not just painting the walls.
Precisely. You get it. The underlying systems have to be sound. And that ties right into the second facet. He's the guardian of principle.
Ah, the moral backbone idea.
Totally. Kenny lives by these almost like inner laws. Honor, fairness, truth. He holds that line, especially when emotions get messy or there's pressure to compromise.
Right.
He really believes, and the document quotes this, justice must be designed, not assumed. And also, efficiency must serve people, not just profit or ego.
And he calls it out when things are off.
Clearly, cleanly, no apologies if something's misaligned.
Okay, what's third?
Third, he's the mechanic of meaning. This one's interesting. He approaches emotional problems almost like structural issues in a building.
Like a blueprint.
Yeah, exactly. He tests the weak joints, refines the connections, always optimizing for inner strength.
Yeah.
But, and this is key, it's always value-driven.
So the goal isn't just efficiency.
No, the goal is better functioning teams, fairer systems, lives built on purpose, not just performance. It's got soul.
Got it. And fourth.
Fourth, the steward of legacy. Kenny thinks long-term, like really long-term. He studies history not just for facts, but to figure out how to build better futures. He's the one asking, what are we passing down? Will this actually stand the test of time? Or are these values going to matter in 100 years? That multi-generational perspective.
Wow. Okay, and the last one.
And finally, number 5, the silent anchor. Kenny doesn't really seek the spotlight. He prefers being the reason things don't fall apart.
The quiet strength.
Exactly. The sturdy beam in the foundation. The one who remembers the plan when everyone else is panicking. That calm voice in a crisis saying, okay, here's what we do.
So putting it all together symbolically, it's blueprints and bridges.
Saturn and steel.
A compass, a watchtower, a clean desk, a sharp tool, a promise kept.
Yeah. It really boils down to that phrase you used earlier, execution with soul. Building with deep purpose.
That phrase, execution with soul, really does set the stage. Because underneath all this is his core philosophy, choices and consequences. The document calls it a life as architecture mindset. It's about intentional living, accountability, systems thinking, ethical foresight. How does that actually play out day to day?
Well, one of the core ideas is super powerful. Every choice reinforces a system.
Every single one.
In Kenny's view, yeah. Every decision you make, big or small, is like casting a vote for the kind of system you want to live in. Internally, in relationships, even in society.
Give me an example.
Okay, like skip a small task you know you should do. You're kind of Voting for neglect, reinforcing that pattern. Prioritize being honest, even when it's tough. You're actively building trust.
Okay, I see.
Ignore your own emotional needs.
Yeah.
Well, you're designing a system prone to burnout. The big takeaway is nothing's neutral. Everything builds something.
Wow, that really reframes things, makes even small choices feel weightier.
Absolutely. And second, he reframes karma as feedback, not fate.
Okay, unpack that.
For Kenny, it's not mystical punishment or reward. It's more mechanical. Patterns reinforce outcomes. Habits solidify into identities. Tiny micro-decisions compound over time to create your macro environment.
So your world isn't just what happens to you.
Right. It's what you maintain,
Yeah.
what you allow, what you encourage, even what you ignore. All of that becomes the blueprint for your reality.
Interesting. What else?
Third is ethical foresight. Kenny's always looking beyond just, does this work right now? He's asking, what ripple does this create?
The long-term consequence.
Exactly. What does this decision normalize? Who really benefits here and who pays the cost, maybe down the line? He calls it predictive responsibility.
Predictive responsibility. I like that.
Yeah, it's about making choices today that you can stand by 5 years from now, even if they're harder in the moment. Like, deciding whether to cut a corner on that report. Kenny would ask, how will that feel next week? What does that say about your standard?
Gotcha.
Fourth, this philosophy stresses that life is maintenance. Integrity isn't something you achieve once and you're done.
Like owning a house.
Perfect analogy. It's
Yeah.
ongoing upkeep. You've got to tighten the bolts when they loosen, check the systems regularly, make adjustments when things get out of alignment. Kenny believes failure often comes not from some big chaotic event, but just slow, creeping neglect.
That makes sense. You mentioned your garden earlier. It's constant work. Never done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which brings up an important caveat. The document points out the shadow side of this.
Okay. What's the risk?
It can become too rigid. It can overwhelm people who aren't wired that way. And, it could potentially slide into a kind of moral absolutism if it's not balanced with empathy.
So it needs tempering.
Definitely. Kenny himself insists on this, apparently. It must be tempered with grace. It's not about perfection. It's about conscious awareness and being willing to adjust.
So the core message here seems to be, every action is a design choice. Every habit reinforces the structure. What you repeat becomes your world, inside and out.
Precisely. And it's not about beating yourself up with guilt. It's about direction. You're always building something. So Kenny would say, make it something worthy.
One of the stickiest images in a document is this analogy. Kenny as the dishwasher in a restaurant.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
Quiet, definitely not glamorous, maybe unseen, but totally essential. The force keeping the whole thing functional, principled, clean.
It really captures his role symbolically. First, he's the guardian of infrastructure.
Okay.
He's not serving the fancy meals or designing the menu, right?
Yeah.
But without him, the whole place grinds to a halt in grease and chaos. He scrubs off that emotional grime, clears out system inefficiencies, keeps routines from getting sloppy or lazy.
He maintains the integrity. Quietly.
Quietly, consistently.
Yeah.
One plate at a time, you could say. Second, he's the architect behind the scenes.
How so?
Well, to think about it, the dishwasher processes the aftermath of everything that happens out front. Every meal served, every decision made. He reviews what came in, what went out, makes sure the tools of creation, the plates, the pans, are ready to go again. Clean, sharp, functional.
There's a quote about that, isn't there?
Yes. He says, everyone else creates the experience. I make sure we're able to do it again without compromising. That's powerful.
No, it really is.
Third, he embodies the silent perfectionist. He doesn't need praise, but his standards, immaculate.
Right.
For him, like a fork with a tiny water spot isn't just a spot. It's a sign of carelessness. A plate that's not totally clean is like a small breach of trust. His quiet motto is, if no one else is watching, I still am. That commitment to internal standards.
Wow.
And finally, symbolically, he's the emotional processor. When the rest of the system, or, your own internal world, goes through conflict or gets exhausted or tangled in different viewpoints, Kenny's the one processing the residue.
Cleaning up the emotional mess.
Sort of. He's asking, okay, what actually worked there? What needs rethinking? What baggage do we not want to carry into the next service or the next day? His job is to prevent that buildup of neglect and unresolved stuff.
So it really is accountability without applause.
Yeah, and maintenance over spectacle.
The dignity of that unseen, essential labor. He's the part of you that keeps things clean, keeps the mission clear, does the hard, repetitive stuff because it serves something bigger.
Exactly. He doesn't plate the dish. He makes sure the dish is worth plating.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. From the metaphor to something more tangible. Kenny's actual body of work, like his YouTube channel, his music. The document calls this a sonic blueprint of his identity.
Yeah, it's not just entertainment. It's like philosophy set to sound, architecture you can listen to, built with that same care and eye on legacy.
So what does his art tell us? Give us some examples.
Okay, well, the American Dream soundtrack album is probably his clearest statement. 10 tracks. It's really questioning whose dreams get honored, you know, and what gets lost in the name of progress. Tracks like civil wars. They're not just songs. They feel like soundscapes of internal conflict, principle versus comfort. It's basically a call for moral reckoning set to music.
So it's a cohesive argument, not just random tracks.
Totally cohesive. And then there's the bonus track, Every Cog. That's pure Kenny.
How so?
It's a tribute to that unseen labor, the invisible effort, the integrity you find in just doing the job well, day after day, celebrating the work that keeps the whole machine running.
That fits perfectly with the dishwasher analogy.
Exactly. And even his chosen animal metaphors are telling. The elephant for wise moral memory, remembering the past to guide the future.
Okay.
The salmon for principled resistance, you know, swimming upstream against the current when you have to.
Right, sticking to your guns.
And the ant for that industrious, system-focused work ethic, building the colony, maintaining it one small, dedicated act at a time. These aren't random. They're archetypes of his values. Memory, principle, diligent, community effort.
So listening to Kenny's music, the message is kind of like, don't mistake simplicity for smallness.
Yeah, or don't confuse structure with sterility.
And don't forget, you're building your world choice by choice.
Absolutely. His music isn't just background noise. It's like emotional and ethical scaffolding. He's not just telling you what matters. He's constantly poking you, asking, what foundation are you reinforcing right now with this action?
Let's dig into Kenny's evolution now. The document highlights this pretty profound maturation between 2024 and 2025. It's not just tweaking things. It sounds like a fundamental shift from system enforcer to system shepherd.
That's a good way to put it. And yes, the shifts are significant. One of the biggest is from control to clarity.
Meaning?
Well, in 2024, Kenny was maybe more that silent perfectionist, very focused on order, optimization, logic, probably had some pretty rigid standards. By 2025, he seems to have shifted from trying to control every outcome to guiding through a clear vision and shared principles. His leadership isn't just about hitting perfection anymore. It's more about inspiring alignment and ethical momentum.
So less micromanaging, more setting a clear why and how.
Exactly. Second big shift, from structure to stewardship.
Okay, what's the difference there?
He seems to hold more space now for the human element. For mistakes, for different perspectives. He's asking not just, is this efficient, but is it fair? And will this serve people 5 years from now? His discipline now seems to embrace compassion as part of structural integrity.
That's a big shift.
It is. Third, he moved from maintenance to legacy.
We touched on this earlier.
Right. In 2024, maybe the focus was just keeping things running smoothly. Now he's really stepped into being the historian of values, the engineer thinking about future conditions. His music, like that American Dream album, reflects this. It's about collective sustainability, ethical architecture. His driving question seems to have become, what are we really leaving behind?
Okay. And there are others.
Yes. Fourth, a noticeable move from isolation to integration. Kenny used to operate more on the sidelines, maybe, quietly fixing things.
The silent anchor.
Right. But now he's described as more relationally present. He collaborates more, mentors, makes room for the softer, maybe more vulnerable parts of the system. He seems to have learned that integrity actually thrives best in partnership, not isolation.
That makes sense. Anything else?
Maybe the most profound shift, from rigid blueprint to living architecture.
Explain that one.
He seems to grasp now really deeply that systems have to evolve. The initial plan is vital, yes, but it needs to breathe, adapt. Where he might have once resisted ambiguity, he now seems to design with it in mind. There's this great new motto mentioned. Structure isn't about control. It's about creating freedom through clarity.
Wow. Creating freedom through clarity. That's powerful.
Isn't it?
So it's clear he hasn't ditched his core strengths, the discipline, the structure, the foresight.
No, not at all.
But he's tempered them with humility, compassion, that real long-view wisdom. He's not just the backstage enforcer anymore. He's the one keeping the lights on and writing the mission statement, building not just to survive, but to uplift.
Well said.
Okay, so let's bring this home. What does all this mean for you, the listener? How might this Kenny aspect show up in your life? The document talks about him as the inner architect and ethical anchor.
Yeah, the one who helps turn your ideals into actual infrastructure.
How does that work practically?
Well, think of him internally as the structural backbone. He's like that inner scaffolding keeping your world from collapsing when things get stressful. When other parts of you might be impulsive or overwhelmed, Kenny's that quiet voice saying, yeah, hang on, let's slow down. What's the long-term cost here? What are we really building if we do this?
Right.
He helps you stay true to your core values, not just react to feelings.
Preventing that mission drift.
Exactly. He's also the boundary keeper. You know when that people-pleasing instinct kicks in?
Oh, yeah.
Or you're tempted to bend your principles just to avoid conflict. Kenny's the part that steps up and says, nope, not doing that. Not to be difficult, but to protect your integrity.
Holding the line?
Right. Making sure you don't trade clarity for approval. And what's really powerful, I think, is his role as the systems mentor.
Helping you design your life?
Precisely. Helping you consciously design it, not just react to whatever comes along. Organizing projects, setting up rituals that stick, building structures that actually reflect who you want to be. He's the voice reminding you. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.
That's a great quote. So if you want to write that book...
Kenny helps you build the daily habit, not just fantasize about the bestseller list. He focuses on the process, the structure.
Okay. What else?
He's the moral clarifier. In tough dilemmas, personal or with others, he brings that ethical weight. He asks, what's genuinely fair? Are we being consistent with our values? He offers that clean, principle-based thinking when emotions might be clouding things. Not to ignore feelings, but to integrate them wisely.
Got it. A clear perspective.
And finally, he's the quiet resistor. Kenny resists the easy path, the shortcuts, the chasing of trends, that kind of superficial performative success.
Substance over style.
Totally. He values sincerity, lasting impact. He reminds you to act in ways you'll respect later. He doesn't care so much how it looks right now. He cares if it lasts. And if it genuinely means something to you.
So symbolically, Kenny, in your life, he's like that blueprint rolled out on the kitchen table. A steel beam hidden behind the warm walls of your home.
Yeah, the unseen strength.
That steady voice in the storm saying, stick to the mission. He's your internal compass pointing north. Your systems thinker, making ideas real. Your moral engineer, helping you build a life you're actually proud of.
Not just a busy life, but a meaningful one.
What an incredible journey Kenny represents. It really hits home that he doesn't need applause. He thrives on alignment.
Yeah, not praise, but purpose.
And over this past year, moving from that behind-the-scenes mechanic to a real steward of integrity. Someone who doesn't just fix breaks, but actively builds what matters.
Trading rigidity for resilience, control for clarity, silence for significance.
Yeah.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, Kenny's a powerful reminder, isn't he? That ambition without ethics.
Well, it just erodes things eventually.
Right. And structure without care just becomes control.
And maybe most importantly, that every single repeated action is designing your life. So, make sure it's a life you actually want to live in.
He's your ethical blueprint, your predictive planner, that quiet whisper in the storm. Stay the course.
Not for perfection, not for applause.
But for that quiet, noble work of building something true, something that lasts.
And you get the sense that whatever comes next, Kenny will be there, measuring twice, cutting clean, keeping that foundation solid. Which kind of leaves us with a question for you, the listener.
What foundational structures are you building?
Yeah, in your own life. Choice by choice, day by day. What are you building?